don't want to change your traditions.
I'm not a savage.
My group must... That was a clip from the 1968 film Barbarella. The moment it officially cemented Jane Fonda's status as a worldwide sex symbol. What do you think, Jane, when you look at yourself in Barbarella?
I think it's a charming camp movie, not very sexy, but at the time, young men had their first experiences looking at the film, and I'm glad of that. I think it's kind of cool that I aroused a lot of young men at that certain time. But I compared to, it's pretty tame compared to what we see now, but it's got a lot of charm. We did it before there were any great special effects. We invented them. My then husband, Roger Vadim, came up with all these ideas for how to create special effects, and no one had ever done it before. So it's kind of fun.
I mean, when you say it's not very sexy, you realize there are millions of men watching this who would race to disassociate themselves from that comment.
Well, they remember back to when they were very young. I think looking at it now, it doesn't seem so sexy. But I'd like to remake it. I would.
Do you like being it? Well, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, there's nothing to stop you. I mean, I was going to say, did you like being a sex symbol? But you've remained a sex symbol. I mean, I look at you now, you look as glamorous as you've ever looked.
Thank you very much. I've never thought of myself as a sex symbol. I don't really care one way or another. I just, I like to work, and it was fun to do that, and it was fun to work with a man I was married to, and I'm glad I went on to make movies like Clute and Coming Home when I began to produce, and on Golden Pond. I'm glad I didn't get stuck in the Barbarella mode.
Yeah, I mean, why did you feel, not uncomfortable, but why wouldn't you be that keen to be a sex symbol?
I'm 74 years old. I think it would be inappropriate.
No, I don't mean now, but I mean, when you look back at that period in your life, you don't seem that happy that you were this global sex figure, if you like, you know, the idol of millions of men.
If you really want to know, I wasn't. Barbarella did not do well at the box office. It's become a cult film, but it was not a big deal at the time. And, you know, I came back, and pretty soon after I did They Shoot Horses, Don't They? So that window of time when one could have slotted me into sex symbol didn't really last, because at heart I'm a serious actress who much preferred being in They Shoot Horses, Don't They? And shortly after that, Clute. Because I think that being stuck with a label like sex symbol can be very limiting. I mean, if a man I care about finds me sexy, that's great. But you know, I don't want to be labeled anything.
Who do you
I
think
do a
was
lot
the
of different
sexiest
things.
of all the... Who was the sexiest of all the stars you've ever seen?
Ava Gardner as a woman. I can't think of any. It was Redford, I guess, is my favorite. Bob Redford. I made 3 movies with him.
I interviewed Robert Redford recently, and he just exudes it even now. I think you and he should do a movie together.
I do too.
You could make Barbarella 2.
No, I wouldn't do Barbarella with him. No. I'd do Barbarella with Angelina Jolie. I did have an affair with an angel in the movie, right? So if I had a baby, I would lay an egg. And I won't tell you anymore, because maybe I'll do it one day.
Yeah, I mean, tell me about acting, though. If you were to tell me what really has excited your passions in life, on a chart list of top 3, where would acting fall?
There have been moments in some films when it feels transcendent, when it is the most wonderful feeling when you have entered someone else's reality and you know you're there. Part of you knows that it's not real, and yet you are living inside another human being, and it's meaningful and it works. And when that happens in the context of a film that you produced and conceived of and that is carrying a message that is something meaningful to you, that is beautiful. It happened in On Golden Pond, which I produced for my father. It happened in Coming Home, which I was instrumental in getting done. And it happened in 9 to 5, which was my idea. And it's happened a few times. And when all those things come together, when what you're saying through art is something that you're passionate about, and you love the character and inhabit the character so deeply that it's transformative, that's really, really exciting. There's also, I've been fortunate enough to have done things in my life that have, people tell me, have helped them, have made them happier, better, more clear about their own lives, helped them move forward in their lives. That is profoundly rewarding. And, you know, about 5 years ago, when I had written my memoirs and I was on a road tour promoting my memoirs, and especially women would line up to get me to sign their books, and one would come along and say, remember that march in San Diego in '71 when we marched together against the war? And the next woman would come and say, oh, Cat Ballou, my favorite movie, it saved my life when I was depressed. And then another woman would come and say, that workout video you did helped me get over, you know. And I realized that I have interacted with people in this country in so many different ways over the course of a long time, and it feels good, it really does.
Which is the movie that if you could be remembered for one, you would choose?
Well, I think the one I'll be remembered for is Coming Home, because it was such a beautiful movie and such a universal, so many girls have fathers that had a hard time loving them, and people really identified with that movie. And I think it really, you know, a lot of people have said to me, men and women, but mostly women, I saw the movie and then I went and I brought my father to see it and it changed our relationship. So that's a movie that's been very meaningful to people. But I think, oh my, you know, Coming Home, Clued, it's hard to pick The Doll Maker, which I won an Emmy for. I mean, it's hard to pick one. It's like saying, what's your favorite child? I'm proud
Well,
of
I've got a personal favorite.
Which is yours?
I have a favorite, which is, well, it's On Golden Pond, and I want to come back and talk to you after the break, specifically about that, and about your father and your extraordinary family.
Yeah.
Maybe you and I should have the kind of relationship that we're supposed to have.
What kind of relationship is that?
Well, you know, like a father and a daughter.
Yeah, just in the nick of time, huh? Worried about the will, are you? Well, I'm leaving everything to you except what I'm taking with me.
Just stop it.
Jane Fonda and her father, Henry Fonda, in 1981's On Golden Pond. I mean, very few, I guess, fathers and daughters performed together, let alone Oscar-winning ones. When you look back on that, Jane, what was the experience like for you working so closely with your father?
I feel so blessed, Piers, to have been able to have that experience. He died 5 months later. I bought the play, I made the movie because I wanted to work with him, and we knew he was dying. But to have found a play in which the father-daughter characters so mirrored our own real-life relationship was amazing. And to have been able to say those words to him and to have the resolution at the end of the movie, I mean, it's hard for me to look at the movie still, even now. I just feel so lucky.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I could see you looking away, actually, and I understood that, because, of course, for us, you're both movie stars, but for you, you're watching your father there, and this is shortly before he died.
Yeah. I miss him so much. I feel him so present in my life all the time, and that makes me very happy.
Well, what kind of man was he? I mean, I've read a lot of reports over the years that he could be prone to being cold and detached, that it wasn't always easy as a father-daughter relationship. But what would you say? What do you think the honest portrayal of your father would be as a father?
Well, let's start with a man. As a man, he was a man of profound integrity. He was a good man. He had good values. He had problems in the relationship department. He had problems with emotions, which is interesting for an actor, a hard time expressing emotions and being around someone who was emotional. It was absolutely terrifying to him. You know, he was difficult, but he did his best. He did the best he could, and I was able to tell him that before he died. And you know, if there'd been Prozac then, I think probably our lives would have been very different. But he did the best he could, and I'm so grateful to him. And grateful, whatever he didn't say to me, he communicated through his movies, 12 Angry Men, Young Abe Lincoln, The Wrong Man, you know, Grapes of Wrath. These were the movies that meant something to him. These were the values that he held close to him. And I knew that, and I think some of that seeped into me. The need for justice and equality and fairness and standing up for the underdog. That's what he represented, and I'm proud that in some small way I'm his daughter.
See, it's interesting, when people said to me when I said I was interviewing you, you'll be careful with Jane Fonda, she's feisty, you know, she'll be challenging, she'll be on you. And I was like, yeah, but I've watched interviews you've given before, and I would describe it as more challenging and passionate, that you take things seriously because you believe in them, and you have this driven passion, which I've always assumed that you got from your father and from your strong family. If you were analysing yourself, how would you describe your character?
I don't see myself particularly as feisty. I see myself as caring passionately about things. Now, my dad expressed what he cared passionately about different than me, but that's a generational thing. You know, that he was of a generation when you expressed yourself through voting. You know, he did the best he could because he always voted for the people that he thought would make a difference. I was a protester, and it was hard for him to understand that. So in that sense, that we were different. But I'm my father's daughter in the sense that I do believe strongly in things, and you know, I try to manifest those things in my life and in the social, political activist work I do, and in some of the movies that I've made.
What do you think your father would have made of the way that you have turned out?
Well, he pretty much knew the way I turned out. I mean, I was already turning out who I am, but when he died, the one thing that I know that he would have been really happy about is that I was married to Ted Turner. I found out after my dad died that he was fascinated by Ted Turner. Dad loved the news. He was an avid reader of the news, and he told a reporter that once interviewed me that he thought that Ted Turner was the greatest guy in the world because he started CNN. And Dad never, you know, well, there was something about, Ted and I, the cover of Esquire once had, this part of the picture was Ted and this part was me, or maybe it was the other way around. And when you put the two halves of our face together, it was my father. And Ted reminds me in many ways of my father, and they both loved to fish, and sometimes I'd be out there on a stream fishing with Ted, and it was like my dad was there. And I just thought, Dad, I hope you know that I actually married this man who you loved and admired so much.
I had lunch with Ted Turner a few months ago, and I thought he was an utterly compelling man in every way. Just an irresistible life force. I mean, I imagined that he would be actually not easy to live with because he has this sort of burning energy all the time and need to keep doing stuff, which I could imagine given the way that you are, it was, you know, a cocktail, a heady cocktail, to put it mildly.
We had a great time for 10 years. I just am so happy that I got to spend 10 years with him. It ended when it was supposed to end, and we're very, very close. I just talked to him today. I told him I was going to be on the show. And I'm so proud of him. He's done so much good work in the world.